What is up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Today we're talking about how to grow an Instagram art account, right? So this is for artists that want to do independent work, right? So step one is build a website with a mailing list. Now I know what you're thinking, Jay, that has nothing to do with Instagram. Actually, the only point of building an Instagram account up is so that you can get traffic over onto the website, right? Because Instagram doesn't have a sales platform, at least not right now. So there's no way for you to make money on Instagram. It's really just a place to build an audience so that you can then point them over to the website, so you can convert people over to then make sales, because that's the only way you'll be able to make a living off your work. Now, if you're a person that does this as a hobby, that's fine. You don't have to have a place on the internet as your home base if that's the case, but I would suggest that almost everyone that can at least, like, if you can afford it, have a website, build your own home base, because social media can change at any time. I understand that Instagram is very attractive because it's very public, like everyone can see the numbers. It's almost like this popularity game that's very transparent, right? Like, you don't know which websites get the most traffic. Like, there's no obvious indicators of that. But having a place on the internet is really important. If you are a creator, it's you won't be able to build a strong business just off social media. I know that there's some outliers in this place. Like, there are some artists that have just a bunch of social media accounts and they are living off it. But to get to that point, you have to have a huge audience, and that's not a viable solution for most creators. Most creators need a website. Look at companies like Rooster Teeth that have existed through many iterations of the internet, and they've always had a home base, and that they've talked about how without their home base they wouldn't have survived. It's pretty important to have this foundation, and I know that has nothing to do with Instagram, but really keep that in mind. You always have to keep the big picture things in mind at all times, because you can easily get lost in things that don't matter, right? Like, Instagram isn't even a great place to convert people over. There are artists on Instagram that have huge followings that don't make a living off it, because most of their audience don't convert, or it doesn't turn into sales. Like, it just doesn't convert. So something to keep in mind. I'm not saying don't spend time on Instagram, just don't spend as much time on Instagram as you do on the website. Build your home base. That's step one, because we want to build a stable foundation. I know that has nothing to do with Instagram. I apologize, but it's number one, no matter what. So step number two is create consistent work. Marketing is a million times easier if you create content regularly. So this is probably the hardest part, right? So most people that ask questions about marketing on Instagram probably have this as their main problem, right? Because if you don't create consistently, then it's very difficult to build the momentum, right? People are going to forget about you if you only post once in a while, unless you have very high quality work, right? People might wait around for your work if it's super high quality. But even if you're aiming for quality, you need to create consistently. Like, you can't, it's very difficult to get momentum online without some sort of consistency. And I think you should aim for a piece per week, depending on what you do, right? So if you're a painter, even if you're a painter, like, a piece per week is what you should aim for. I'm not saying that you should start out doing a piece per week, but if you can do a finished piece per week, that's 54 pieces per year. So that's a lot of momentum that you can gain in a short period of time. If you need to gain a following in a short period of time, then you need to create more consistently at a higher level of quality on a regular basis. Like, that's how the internet works. Instagram has changed their algorithm so that they appreciate quality a lot more now than they used to. So you don't have to create as consistently. It used to be like a daily grind, but now it's much more like, you can rank on a hashtag for much longer than you used to be able to. So Instagram is definitely changing how their algorithm works so that it appreciates for quality, right? So more painters will have a better chance at building a bigger audience on Instagram because of this change, right? Because I feel like Instagram has been dominated by people who do a lot of drawing and watercolor work, because they can create really quickly. But now I think as things move towards quality, right? So a really good painting will be able to rank for art hashtags for a longer period of time so that the creator has more time to create something that is the level of quality that they want, right? So they don't have to worry as much about creating daily, but it still has to be consistent. It still has to be weekly, at least bi-weekly, like 2 per month, whatever you can do, right? Like if you try to create as much as possible, right, on a consistent basis. So that really requires you to find a regular schedule for creation, right? So it's not about changing the way you work, but trying to figure out what hour of the day works the best for you, right? So you have to take stock of your schedule. Like, what are you already doing day to day? What other commitments do you have? And see where you can put time into making work, right? So take stock, figure out a schedule. And when you set a schedule for yourself, pay attention to what you did right before you work, right? So I never do art right after I eat, because right after I eat, I'm usually pretty tired. I feel lazy. So I always make sure that I have time to rest after I eat and then do more work, right? So that a lot of times you might find yourself going through an art block, quote unquote, but the reality is that you've just been trying to work at the wrong hour of the day. And the only way you can figure out which hour of the day is right for you is by keeping track of what you do day to day. Like already take stock of what other commitments you have and then try to place your artwork around it and see what works and what doesn't work. And this process will take months. Like it's taken me about 3 years to figure out like, oh, this works for me. And even now, like even last week, I had more realizations about like, oh, I've been taking a nap at the wrong time. I should just not take naps because it doesn't work. It's better if instead of taking a nap, I should just go for a walk. And that way I come back and I have energy again. And that solved a lot of problems for me. So take stock, build a schedule, make art regularly. That's step number 2. Don't focus your energy on marketing on Instagram unless you're already creating work very consistently. Step number 3 is find the best way to present the work in an interesting way, right? So this is especially relevant for people who work in traditional mediums, right? So if you have a physical object that you're creating, put your tools in the photo that you're taking. Present that this is a physical object, right? So I'll link my Instagram down below, or you can check my website. I changed how I presented my work, and that had a drastic change on the amount of likes I was getting. Like I was getting 150 likes per post, and that shot up to 1,500 just from changing the way I was presenting the work. So there wasn't a change in quality in the drawing per se. The change was in how I was presenting it. So I work in black and white, so I made sure that the photo had a wooden, actually you can actually see it. I'm probably going to cut into this. I'm presenting in a way that makes it interesting. It makes it eye-catching. If you work digitally, you should check out Angel Arium or Pete Moorbacher. I'll link him in the description, because what he does is he's a digital painter. And what he does is instead of just posting the finished image, he takes close-ups of that same painting and then creates a carousel, right? This way he gets more engagement on each post. This is a great way to work around working digitally, right? So you have to find the best way, and the best way for you will be probably different from what most people do, but look around, see who else is ranking on Instagram, right? So check the hashtags and see what other people are doing and figure out what you can copy, and then try it, right? Just try it, see what works. So this step will only work if you're creating work consistently, right? Because you need enough content to play around with, right? If it takes you a long time to finish a piece, like let's say you do very large paintings that are very detailed, make sure to take work in progress photos, right? People like going on that journey with you. So if you take a long time to make stuff, take more photos, figure out how you can squeeze out more content out of one piece, right? You don't have to just show the finished work. You can bank on the process, right? So you can share part of the process, share your thoughts. People love this stuff, right? And it does really well on Instagram. Step number 4 is you find hashtags that work for you that have a low post count, right? So whenever you if you look up a hashtag right now on your phone, you'll see that at the top there's a number that says 100K posts or 1 million posts or whatever. If you have a low, I'm assuming that if you're watching this video that you have a fairly low follower count and you're not getting tons of likes on your post, right? So you want to find hashtags that are 100K and below in post count, right? Unless unless your work is really high quality, right? So the reason why you want to do this is if you try to post into hashtags that have a high post count, your post will drop down really quickly because there's a lot of people posting to it. You're competing in a space where you're not likely to get a lot of traction, right? Because the goal is to be in the top of each hashtag, right? So when you go to a hashtag, you can see who's ranking near the top. If you need like 2,000 likes to rank on a hashtag, that might be very difficult to do. If a hashtag has let's say a hashtag only has 8,000 posts on it, you're much more likely to rank for that hashtag for a long period of time, and that will build your followers, right? So you start with the low post count hashtags and you build your way up. Like I only recently started using higher post count hashtags, and I still gain a lot of followers from the lower hashtags that I use. So it's very important to keep track of that. I think that's about it. One thing that I would recommend is that if you can, and I know this could be a pain in the ass, is that you try to make videos around your work. If you can make process videos, that will be the best content you can make, because it creates deep engagement, right? If someone's looking at a photo, they'll probably look at it for 2 seconds, 5 seconds at most, right? Like even if they love it, they won't. You don't stare at an image for that long, at least not normally. But a video, you usually watch the video. Like if you make a minute video, that means that a person's looking at your content for an entire minute, right? So process videos do really well because the algorithm says, oh, this person's looking at this piece of content for an entire 60 seconds compared to all these other photos that are only getting a 2-second engagement, right? And also if you check the hashtags that you're following, like if you just check any art hashtag, a lot of times there will be a big square with a video in it, right? And then a bunch of small squares where it's photos, right? So you get more real estate on that hashtag if you create video content. Now I know that's very difficult to do. For some people, that's just not plausible. I would go and check out Angel Aram again, because Pete Moorbacher, what he does is, instead of shooting video, what he does is he has photos of his process, right? So he saves photos of his digital painting process and he puts them into a video file so that it goes from the beginning and then slowly shows the process over a few seconds, right? So that way people will stay on it and look at it for 15. I think they're about 15 seconds. You can go over there and check. That creates deep engagement. It's a way for you to create video without actually shooting video. Now, these are like kind of big picture stuff. I will do more detailed videos on Instagram because I think there are certain things that work really well. Do video if you can. Figure out how you can create a lot of content that's engaging for people. Like that's the most important part about getting traction on Instagram. Hopefully that was useful. See you guys in the next one.